Jeff Lund, and this is the Mediocre Alaskan podcast, where we are intolerant of weak-minded attitudes that keep people from pursuing new and exciting things in the areas of fitness, outdoors, and general lifestyle. My guest today is Anna Ulmer. Anna is a former occupational therapist. She is a current yoga teacher. She studied child psychology, has been involved in teacher retreats. She started her own school in Costa Rica when she lived there. Now she is in Ketchikan, and during her first winter, getting the first glimpse of what it is to be in Ketchikan when it's not tourist season and it's not sunny and nice and the fish are running. So we'll see how she is coping with that. And also talk about a lot of things with regards to wellness, to getting through, the people that you surround yourself with, and how to use social media for good rather than as a distraction to waste your life. All that is coming up here in episode 15, brought to you by LMT Lifestyle. Go to lmtlifestyle.com for the Live Mentally Tough gear to inspire you and be with you comfortably as you crush it in life. Here we go with episode 15. So I'm here with Anna Ulmer. Recently came to Ketchikan. Can you tell me about how you got here, what you're doing here, and your first impressions?
Sure. So I've been in Ketchikan since August, so I've been here for just 4 months. And prior to that, I was living in Costa Rica for the past 2 years. And so I came here just to visit my friend Amanda, and we did a little mini women's yoga retreat in August. And then I sort of got convinced to stay here. I was just going to be here for maybe a month or so, and then I was thinking about going to Bend, Oregon for a while, but it has just been such an incredible place and an incredible community that I'm still here.
Nice.
And I don't really have any plans of leaving right now. So
yeah. It's a nice, people think rural Alaska, island Alaska, it's going to be, the TV shows you see, but the people here they're good people.
Yeah,
there's a lot of stuff to be involved in.
Yeah, and I've been here a few times before to visit Amanda, and every time I've come, it's been one of my greatest memories and adventures, and I love visiting here, and so it's been really great to have this extended time here and to really be able to explore Ketchikan. And this is my first winter in Ketchikan, so it's a little bit different every time I've been here in the summer, but it's been okay. There's been so many I think good opportunities in the winter to just kind of slow down and kind of go inward and allow yourself that time to really rest and recharge. Yeah.
It really forces you to look at your lifestyle and happiness, because it's a lot of dark, and right now it's raining, blowing 20, 25. But you really get an idea of, okay, how healthy is my lifestyle? How healthy a person am I? Because it's dark, and you have seasonal affective disorder, and you have a lot of reasons you could be unhealthy. And so, all right, I have to make a conscious effort to make sure eating right, fitness, things like that, so I'm not depressed during the winter.
Yeah, it feels harder to do that, right? It's dark, and you're tired. You want to sleep more. You want to eat more. I mean, you almost, like every other animal does in nature around here, you just want to hibernate in a way. So it's kind of that extra effort, and I find myself constantly trying to balance that of allowing myself to rest, and then, okay, I should probably get up and move today. This is too much resting, or and it kind of this just funny feeling. I mean, I grew up in Minnesota, so I'm used to winters, but it's been probably 6-7 years since I've experienced a real winter. But I kind of forgot this feeling of how your body just kind of feels sad. I don't feel mentally sad. I feel great, but I feel I just feel this extra kind of heaviness. So
it's easier to absorb the sun than it is to absorb that rain. So without making you depressed, you were in Costa Rica. It probably sounds pretty good right now. What were you doing in Costa Rica?
I was running a school there. A holistic education center for kids ages 4 to 10. I was doing mindfulness, wellness, nutrition programs for them, as well as some conservation projects. And it was an incredible experience, not only just living abroad, but having that experience of running a school and kind of being able to design it how we wanted our dream education model to be. But it was just I was ready to come back to the United States at the same time. It sounds really amazing to live in Costa Rica, and it is on a lot of levels, but there's also this it's the jungle, it's a developing country, like nothing is easy or convenient, And part of that I really, really loved because it forced me to constantly be outside of my comfort zone. And you just appreciate the little things so much more.
Yeah.
Like coming back to the U.S. and going to a grocery store, it's just like, there's so much everywhere. And, the modern conveniences that we're so spoiled by in the U.S. we really take for granted, and we don't realize how great we do have it, how much abundance we do have around us all the time. Yeah.
If you're in the lower 48, you have better access to grocery stores that have more healthy food.
Sure.
Ketchikan doesn't necessarily have that. There's the nutrition store, was it Rain Country?
Yeah.
And then sections at Safeway or sections at A&P. So how have you found being able to eat, because you are nutritionist, you take all that very seriously.
Yeah.
What are some tips? What have you found about Ketchikan and making sure that you can still live that lifestyle?
So this isn't going to be helpful for people because I am really spoiled where I live. I live with my best friend Amanda and her husband. Her husband is an incredible gardener. And basically since I've been here, I've been eating from his garden.
Nice.
It's like incredible organic garden. In fact, it's gotten to the point where now the harvest is over and we don't have as much food, so it's like, oh wow, now I have to go back to the grocery store. Like I haven't done that in a while, and so I've been incredibly fortunate to have that. But I think you can still make the best of it. Living in Costa Rica, I didn't have access to healthy organic food at all. Like their organic wasn't even really a thing there at all. In fact, Costa Rica is one of the most heavily pesticide sprayed food countries in the world because of when the banana plantations like Chiquita and everything went through in the 60s and 70s. They kind of destroyed a lot of the rainforest and started these practices of heavily chemically sprayed foods. So it's really hard to find find good organic food there. So, you just kind of have to get creative in that way by, going, getting to know your local farmer, someone who's trying to do something like that and provide organic food. But I think you still can, even the grocery stores here, there is still, I've been impressed with that. There is still a small selection of, organic foods and frozen foods, and you can make it work for sure.
Website, feedinghappiness.com, so make sure everybody that's listening goes and checks that out. One of the things that you wrote, I think you hit it on the head with the adulting will kill you, how to escape. You wrote that earlier this year.
Yeah.
I think the term adulting for the older sort of anti-millennial generation thinks, well, there's the classic example. You're not even mature enough or responsible enough to use the word adulthood. You're using this adulting as kind of a whatever. So there are people who definitely don't want to grow up, and they don't want to be responsible because they just want stuff handed to them. We won't even worry about them. What about the fulfillment type of people? You say adulting is not how adulthood should be, because real adulting should be incredible, thrilling, and full of fulfillment. So how does one kind of achieve that? What would you recommend for people? So
I wrote that article because I started seeing all these things, like these memes and these T-shirts and things that said, not adulting today, and I'm over adulting, and I was confused on what that meant. And just thought it was really sad that that's how we view adulthood now, that it's not something to look forward to, that, I think aging is a privilege to still be alive and to be an adult, and it should be something we look forward to, and it should be something that keeps getting better, not worse. And we sort of have this idea in our society that once you become an adult, that it's all responsibilities and mortgages and loans and working and raising a family or whatever it is, that we kind of lose ourselves in that, I think. And I think that's why we start to have this negative connotation with adulting, because we're stressed out all the time. And I think that's just really backwards. I don't think adulting should be that way. I think adulthood should be really fulfilling and exciting, and it should make you feel alive more than it drains you. And I think all too often we feel drained more than we feel alive. And I think the biggest thing with adulting is that you have to take responsibility for your own life. Real adulthood means taking responsibility for your own life outside of all those other societal things where, how everyone kind of gets in this hamster wheel of going to school, getting a job, graduating from college, and then getting married and having kids and whatever it is. We all have these sort of unsaid rules of our culture of how we're supposed to live and what we're supposed to do, and we often don't question them. We often don't take a step back and say, is that really what I want? What do I actually want, like inside my heart? What like makes me happy? What makes me excited? And because we're not really taught to think that way at all. You know, we're taught to just like get good grades and finish and find a job that will somehow like fit us, you know, instead of trying to figure out what makes the most sense for our own lives. And so I think that type of responsibility is actually a lot harder because it forces you to question your life. It forces you to really look at like, are my relationships, my jobs, my activities, my hobbies, are they actually fulfilling me? And are they serving me in the way I want to be living as an adult? And oftentimes I think those answers can be really scary. And once you really look at the truth of some things, we kind of don't want to face them. We'd rather avoid them because maybe that relationship isn't serving me. Maybe my job isn't actually serving me, and maybe I need to look at how I can change it. And it doesn't mean, you know, you should break up with your partner or you should quit your job. I'm not saying that. I think, how can you make your circumstances better? I think that's one question that I've always asked myself is how can I make my life better? Like, how can I continue to improve and grow and transform instead of just doing the same thing all of the time?
I think a lot of people have more control than they give themselves credit for as far as their individual happiness. And they think, you know, if it is just about getting a job and I have the job, to establish that sort of stability is the responsible thing to do. So get stable, get set, you know, start working on your 401k. But I think people do have a lot of power, and that attitude you talk about with, okay, I might be doing this job, but I can really have some fun, right? Yeah. And then the job doesn't have to be your entire life. When what are you doing outside of it? And so if you're at work for 8-9 hours a day, you still have a good portion of your day left to do other things.
Sure.
As a teacher, I see that, you know, a lot where potential burnout, where you just go crazy and you're really getting after it.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of energy, but it kind of has to. You know, if I pace myself as a teacher, then I don't think it's not going to be fun for me.
Right.
The kids are going to be sitting there bored.
Yeah.
So I think you kind of have to do that. And then you have your summers off, which is great, but that's kind of the therapy. That's kind of the mental sort of release so I can come back. And I promised myself I'd never do summer school or work during the summers because I need that time to, you know, come to Alaska. And when I taught in California, come to Alaska and get recharged for the year.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think especially for teachers, I think teachers are some of like the hardest working professionals, and they do it so quietly and humbly. You know, where you have such long hours where you're curriculum planning and you're lesson planning, and you know, you're managing classrooms full of kids that are often oversized, and you have little support. And I don't think people fully understand what it takes to be a teacher and how stressful it can be, and you know how much you have to be on all day long, and juggling so many different things, whether it's from, you know, trying to make sure you get your Common Core in, or to, you know, managing classroom behaviors, to, you know, grading tests or whatever it is. And one of the things that I do is I work with teachers on mindfulness training, because I'm really passionate about helping teachers to embody mindfulness in their own lives, to help, you know, manage burnout and stress, and be able to find that place within themselves so that they can then teach to children from that place. Mindfulness is definitely something that I wish I would have learned when I was younger, because it's helped me so much in my adult life. And I think it's something that's really missing from schools, just, you know, how to understand yourself, how to relate to yourself and the world around you, to help breed more empathy and compassion and understanding.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about also on that website, the mindfulness retreats for teachers. Can you talk a little bit about the retreats you've done? Are you still doing them? Where's the next one?
Yeah, so we don't have one currently planned. Our last one we did in Costa Rica. And we had 12 educators come from California. And so the goal of those retreats is really to give back to the teacher. So they're like a week-long retreat somewhere in beautiful locations. This year we're looking at going to Tulum in April, but we don't have the date set yet. And so it's a mix of, you know, adventure, whether it's like waterfall tours and stand-up paddleboarding or whatever it is, but also daily yoga, and then mindfulness workshops. So teachers then also receive professional development units for mindfulness training.
Nice.
And the goal is really to give back to the teacher so that they can take these practices home with them and then teach it to kids.
A buddy of mine that's been coming up to Alaska for the last, 7 or 8 years now, both of his daughters were getting married 2 summers ago, and he was trying to schedule another trip in between the two weddings, and his wife said, no, you're not going to Alaska for a week and do that. You have so we missed that week, but when you don't have access to it here, it's easy because you go outside and you kind of take it for granted. Sure. But it's just amazing to be able to live in a place that is a retreat.
Yeah.
And to get recharged and just love it from that perspective.
Yeah.
You talked about empowering teachers with some things that are going to be more impactful on the kid in class rather than the student. What do we miss out as far as education when we don't teach kids about basic nutrition and then about taking control of their own wellness? What is that? Yeah. How is that lacking, and what do we miss by it?
I think we're doing a huge disservice to our children by not teaching them those things. I think those are basic things that we need as humans to live a happy and healthy and fulfilling life. I think it's madness that we don't teach our kids how to grow food and where food comes from. And I remember growing up in Minnesota, and I had this aha moment, probably almost in like middle school, which is far too late to realize this, when I realized that you shouldn't probably be getting strawberries in the winter because they don't grow in the winter. And I had this aha moment that, food is seasonal, because no one had taught me that. Mm-hmm. And not knowing, the difference of how a strawberry grows compared to how a tomato grows. These are really basic things of human survival that we don't know how to do. If we ever got into some sort of crazy situation in our society where we didn't have access to grocery stores or foods and shipments weren't coming in, what would we do? The majority of us would not know what to do or know how to grow our own food, and I think that's just doing us a really huge disservice. Mm-hmm. And plus, when we're not doing that, we become so disconnected from what we're eating because we don't understand the process of what it takes to grow it. We have no connection to that thing that we're eating, and I think that's a huge reason why we see a lot of the problems that we see with the earth today. And what's happening to our planet is that we're so disconnected from the earth, from everything from what we eat to how we engage with it. And I think the more that we can help children to understand their connection to the earth and how important it is to understand where food comes from and how it nourishes our bodies, the better off we'll be in general, and then allow them to make their own choices about health. So really empowering them to make good decisions.
I've been doing a lot of reading and listening to podcasts, and there's so many different people who are saying so many different things about this is the right diet, or you talked about the 50s and 60s earlier, and just the chemicals that were just so rampant, and then pharmaceutical companies, and how much of the things that were laws or whatever, this is the rule of eating that is old and it's based on facts that are no longer valid or that were based on lies. And so you have people that are still buying into that sort of stuff. With the amount of opportunities for people to be healthy and also be happy, like therapy, go outside, is it surprising that so many people can't find a level of fitness, health, and depression?
I don't think so. I think there are so many deeply rooted conditioning and beliefs that we have about who we are as people that it doesn't surprise me that people aren't taking on those opportunities. I mean, number one, some people just don't know, and number two, a lot of people lack the drive to do those things for themselves. And I think a big reason for that is that we don't know who we are, and we don't stop to take the time to know who we are. And I think we have this view of ourselves in our society that we just don't think for ourselves the way that we should. And so when we're not doing that, we're sort of always in this survival mode where we're kind of constantly just going through the motions, and we're stressed out, and our nervous systems are kind of always in this fight or flight in our sympathetic nervous system, and we're kind of chronically stressed out like that, even though we might not even realize it because it's just become so normal for us. And I think in a weird way we kind of get addicted to that because our brains seek patterns and they seek the sameness for survival. And so we're kind of always in this mindset where we're not really stopping and pausing and resting. And if we're always in that survival mindset, we're always draining energy. We're not, versus being in more of what's called a creative mindset, where it's more focused on abundance and gaining energy and really sort of this restoring that happens when you're in that mindset, when you stop thinking so much about that survival and just the everyday routine.
After years of fine print contracts and getting ripped off by big wireless providers, if we've learned anything, it's that there's always a catch. So when I first heard that Mint Mobile offers premium wireless starting at just $15 a month, I thought, what's the catch? But after talking to them and using their service, it all made sense. There isn't one. Mint Mobile's secret sauce is that they're the first company to sell wireless service online only. They cut out the cost of retail stores and pass those sweet savings directly to you. For anyone who hates their phone bill, Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for just $15 a month. I was hesitant about having to get a new phone and a new phone number, but with Mint, you can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and keep your same phone and your same phone number along with all of your existing contacts. Mint Mobile gives you the best rate whether you're buying for one or for a family, and at Mint, families start at 2 lines. All plans come with unlimited talk and text plus high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Switch to Mint Mobile and get premium wireless service starting at just $15 a month. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month and to get the plan shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/waypoint. That is mintmobile.com/waypoint. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/waypoint.
Mode that you can sort of get in, and I think because we're always in that, we just don't take the time to really do that for ourselves.
Yeah.
I was reading this book. It's called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, and it talks about this neuroscientist, and he talks about how 95% of our actions throughout the day are automatic, where we're not even really thinking about what we're doing. He talks about that feeling where when you drive home and suddenly you're home and you don't know how you got there.
Yeah,
Which happens a lot.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And that's scary. And our brains end up doing that throughout the day because, like, our neurons are always trying to find these patterns that make sense to us. Because, okay, this is survival. We know, like, we'll be stable and comfortable if we do this. Let's keep doing that.
Yeah.
And I think we so often get stuck in that mode.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is one of the reasons why people just start taking time for themselves to really work on their own growth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think the people that you're around is so important too.
Yeah.
I was in California for 10 years teaching, and when I told one of my buddies that I was moving here, he was excited. He said, all right, because he knew that was like the right thing to do. And other people were kind of sad, and I was sad to leave too, because these people you're around.
Right.
But he knew that it was one of those, like, it wasn't he was happy to see me go, it was that he was happy that I was going, however you want to semantically work that out. And I think those people who encourage you to do certain things, places you don't have to do it together, so if that routine is built around people who also want to strive and don't want to be stagnant, I think it's really important too.
Yeah.
Talk about your influences and talk about the people who you want to surround your life with and how that makes you better.
Yeah, I think that has been a really important factor in my life, where having like a tribe of people who support me and uplift me and who challenge me and who inspire me. I think this thing happens as you get older, where you start evaluating your relationships and you sort of start like cutting around the edges of the relationships that aren't really serving you anymore. And sometimes that can be painful and hard because there's some relationships where you look at, wait, why are we still friends? Like, just because we have this history and we've known each other for so long, but really we're not on the same page anymore.
Yeah.
And not that you have to totally cut that person out of your life, but I think really evaluating like who you're spending your time with. They say that you're the sum of like the 5 people you spend the most time with. Like you literally start becoming like them.
Yeah.
Like our brains just do that. So evaluating who are you around and who do you want to be like, and surround yourself with those people.
Yeah, you're taught not to be selfish, but in that case, you kind of have to be, because it's your life, and so you have to be looking at, okay, well, what influences are these people having on me? Like, am I better because of these people?
Right.
Or, like you said, I'm just holding on because we have a history.
Right.
We spent so much time cultivating a relationship, but what am I getting out of this? Like, and how are we better by hanging out? And it can be a difficult thing, especially at the high school level. I deal with that a lot. It's like, hey, you got to choose your friends wisely. And they've heard it for so long, but they don't know their life, or they can't picture their life without some of these people. And if they were to remove that influence, but you have to do it. It sounds cold, sounds sad, sounds selfish, but what's the world going to benefit by you being drugged down? And it's not to say that you two split up and he ends up being really successful, and you end up being really successful and happy and fulfilled. But maybe just the dynamic right now needs to change. That can be a difficult thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are some things in the people you found here in Ketchikan that have kind of helped you? Just Amanda, right, when you first came up, and now how have you kind of filled in those other couple spots of your tribe?
Coming to CrossFit has been huge for me. There is a really great community of people that come here, and before coming to CrossFit, I sort of had always been like, I'm not doing CrossFit. That's not for me. Mm-hmm. I do lift weights, but the whole idea of CrossFit in my mind was I had a stereotypical view of just all these macho egos in CrossFit, and hurting themselves and doing all these crazy things, and I was like, I don't want to do that. But Amanda really convinced me to come. She's like, it's not like that at all. They're incredible people, and she's right. I've just absolutely loved coming here. I feel changes in my body. I come here not even so much to work out all the time. It's just it's so nice to come and just see people and know that people are going to be here and hold each other accountable, and especially this time of year, it's really nice to feel like you have that community to come to and just catch up with. One of the nice things about coaching is during the winter, everything's planned. I'm so busy. I practice after school every day, and I'm traveling, and so it makes the winter go really fast. But that's one thing I definitely do miss is just the people. Kevin's great. He's a good dude, funny dude. It's funny to see him. He's so good in the gym, and he's so just dialed in, and he knows what to say and do all that. And you take him fly fishing, and he's just out of the realm, which is funny because it was reversed when I'm here. Sure. He's like, "Dude, what are you doing?" But now it's great to see that. And talk about times in your life when you haven't been good at things right off the bat, and kind of getting through that. Because if you're a first-time CrossFitter, and I hear that if I go to a gym, it's going to be a great way to get through the winter. Right. But I'm going to be terrible at it. How do you get past that? I don't like not being good at things. So when I first came here, it was really intimidating because there's all these incredibly strong women, and actually the majority of people I work out with here are women, which I was really surprised by. And at first it kind of went through this phase of where it was really inspiring. It was like, wow, I want to be that strong too. And then just some days really defeating, where they're doing 20 kipping pull-ups in a row, and I'm just trying to get one pull-up with the band, and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. But in that way, I think a really important thing, with pushing myself, or when I haven't been. I don't like the idea of being I've been good or bad at all. I think that's a really backwards view that we have in our society, where we use shame and guilt a lot to push ourselves, and I think that's a really dead end and empty road, and a really detrimental road. And I think it's more important to really just honor wherever you're at, and accept yourself where you're at, and really listen to your body and kind of find that edge of, okay, I can push myself to this point, but I'm not going to get down on myself because I can't do what she's doing, or I can't do what he's doing, because this is my journey and it's totally different from theirs.
It can. The line can be very subtle, because it's rather than accept a lesser version of yourself because you're comparing to, well, I'm never going to be this, and so I'm going to, dial back. It's that not feel bad, but feel just uncomfortable enough, and know that you have just a little bit more to push and to continue to improve. And some people, with the New Year's resolution type thing, they don't think it's them and they failed, and so they just quit and give up. Whereas it's going to be difficult, but you got to know that it's within you to be able to follow through with that and find a little bit more. It doesn't matter what other people are doing. It's what you're doing. And it's, as a coach, you see that a lot with the kids, that they think they buy into, well, I'm just not good, so I'm not going to. Well, I try real hard because I'm just, no, you don't have to accept that. Sure. But it is difficult to, I don't know how you coach that out of people. I don't know what Kevin does psychologically to get people to get better, or coaches in general, but that's a...
Well, I think, and what I've seen Kevin do, and what he has done for me, is he never makes you feel bad about where you're at or what you're doing. He just encourages you. And if I can't do something, he's like, all right, that's okay. Let's take a break. Or, because I think more often than not, people here come here because they do want to push themselves. They're not coming here just to mess around. They are willing to push themselves, and he's really great about giving that positive reinforcement and encouragement. But I think the biggest thing with comparing yourself to other people and pushing yourself or whatever it is is that like let it be inspiring, but don't let it crush you in the way of like I'm never going to be that way, or don't have these unattainable goals where I have to be like that person or I'm not going to be happy. I think it's more of like using it as a reminder of like, oh, look at the potential of the human body. Like I could have that potential too. I'm no different from them. Like I can do whatever I want with my body, and it's up to me how I want to live my life and to push myself, and I'm in control of that versus this like, I have to be better, I suck kind of attitude.
Have you had times when you failed, and how did you get kind of back?
Absolutely.
Back
I think failure has been my biggest teacher in life. I think I used to be really afraid of failure, thinking I had to kind of like do everything perfectly. But I think the times that I have failed are the times that I've grown the most. And I think that's something that we need to teach our children more, is that like it's okay to fail. And actually failure is a huge part of life, just like pain is equally a part of life as joy is. And there are lessons in the pain just as there are lessons in the joy. And I think failure is what ultimately leads us to success, because you have to have that trial and error and you have to figure out, oh, that didn't work. Okay. And oftentimes the bigger the fail, the bigger the lesson and the more you learn. So I was in Costa Rica, and I had sort of a difficult business relationship with the woman I was running the school with, and I decided I had to leave that situation because it was becoming really toxic for me, and it just wasn't in line with how I wanted to run things like ethically and a lot of other different things. And for me, at first, it felt like a huge failure, because it felt like I was giving up on this dream project that I had like poured my heart and soul into for 2 years, and I was just going to walk away. And I felt like I'm a failure. I couldn't make it work because of this relationship with this woman, and it was really, really hard for a while, and I was really had to kind of like mourn the loss of that. And it was really fascinating kind of watching my thoughts through that whole process of feeling like a failure. And I allowed myself to feel that way for a while, but then what I think is really important when you're going through something like that is taking a step back and looking like, okay, what am I learning from this? Instead of, wow, I failed, this sucks, why is this happening to me? Like thinking like, how is this happening for me? And I've learned huge lessons in valuing myself and not allowing myself to be taken advantage of, in realizing my own like strength and ability to run a business. Those are huge, huge lessons for me, and unfortunately they had to be, well, I shouldn't say unfortunately, I mean it's just the way that it was, and I don't think it could have been any other way for me to like go through that and come to the place where I'm at now, because now I feel stronger and more confident than I was prior to that experience. I
think given the opportunity, if someone is asked, hey, would you rather not go through this because not to make this decision, I think a lot of people would say, well, yeah, I'd rather not go through that and avoid it. But sometimes things are unavoidable and you have to go through that sort of stuff. But it's not easy because you're accepting misery, or you're understanding that misery is part of it and that stress is part of it. But, there's, without risk, there's no reward. And that reward might come in a different sort of shape than you initially imagined. But
you never know where it could take you. And I think as a society as a whole, we are so afraid to go into it. We're so afraid to go into that misery and that pain and actually just feel it. Like we will do anything to not feel it. Whether it's drinking or watching TV or scrolling through social media, like we will do anything to avoid actually feeling the thing. And I'm guilty of it too, of course. I catch myself doing it all the time, because we haven't really been taught that there's also like so much beauty and lessons in that pain, and that it's a necessary part of life to go through heartbreaks, to go through failures, to go through misery, and allowing ourselves to really go through it and like be vulnerable throughout the process. And I think it's really like a disservice that we do to ourselves if we're not willing to just like face that pain head on, because that's ultimately where so much of our growth comes from in life. Going
back to the social media thing, it's a weird dynamic that you have to have if you do have a business or any sort of online presence, writing, whatever. You have to have, because it's free. Social media, to not have social media presence is to miss out on free marketing, which is crazy. And then students have social media, and so they're talking about, oh, there's this, and Mr. Lund, I think I'm gonna delete my social media. I'm gonna delete my Instagram account. I said, okay, good.
Right.
another thing you might try, because at some point you're probably going to be, because kids always say that, and then 2 months later they're back on it. So when you rebuild it, if you do, start with a foundation of different types of people. Follow people who are motivating. So you talk about the 5 people who are the closest to you, they're the biggest influence. I think now in the digital age, one of those is probably also a digital version of that. So you have the human beings that you're with, and like the one type of person that you follow as well. The person when you're scrolling through social media, that it's these type of people. And so if that's negative, I'm around some good friends, but everything I'm seeing on social media is negative. So I said, once I said, we'll just rebuild around these people. And they're people who were, positive, that were healthy, that were motivating. And so she's going to have social media, but it's going to have a different look, and it's going to have a different influence. And I think it can totally be beneficial.
Absolutely.
And listen to podcasts and the people that I follow on social media, it's encouraging. So every time you do scroll, I'm addicted, I'll admit it,
Sure.
But you scroll through and you're seeing good stuff, and so it's reinforcement rather than nonsense.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I try to do that as well. And I think the biggest thing with when you do go on social media is just like checking with your intention. Like, why am I going on right now? Am I going on just because I'm bored, or I'm trying to like avoid feeling something, or or am I going on because I just want to like I'm going down this negative hole of comparing myself to other people's lives, or am I going on because I truly want to see what my friends are doing, or I want to feel inspired. And so I always try to check in with my intention. I don't always do it, of course. Sometimes I just find myself scrolling. I'm like, wait, where did the last 30 minutes go? Like, what have I actually been doing? It's scary that like our brains just like do that for so long. So I think it's really important to check in with your intention behind it all. And it is a really hard thing having to have a social media presence. I struggle with it a lot, where I go through phases where like, I'm not posting anymore. I'm so sick of this weird game of like having to like post pictures of myself and things that I believe in. Feeling like trying to always check in that it's coming from like an authentic place, because it's also really it's a lot easier to write really vulnerable things than it is to talk about them. So I can write this like beautiful post, and then I'm like, wow, would I actually say that to somebody? And I always try to check in with myself that I would, because it's so much easier to hide behind a screen. And sometimes I get frustrated with kind of the inauthenticity of social media in general, and some people that I follow and I enjoy and feel inspired by, and I just or people I don't feel inspired by, and I just feel like it's such like a weird marketing game. You're like, do you really mean that? Is that really your life? And it's always like the pretty shiny things of life, and how beautiful their life is, and how great their life is, and people aren't really posting about how it's like a highlight reel of people's lives.
Exactly.
People aren't showing like the pain part of life, which we so avoid. And so then we think, man, I suck. Like I don't feel good, and that person's life is awesome all the time. What am I doing wrong? When it's never that case.
I like the people I follow too. If they do post something that's motivating, I can see that they're like kind of living that out. Just subscribing to those like daily inspirational type quotes. It's so ambiguous, and it's so, well, who said this and what does it really mean? But if you look at this person is living that out. Understanding that there's going to be flaws and that they're going to mess up. That this person is not perfect. They don't have it figured out. They have it figured out for them, and so it can be motivating. Say, hey, this person, this quote from this person, that this is awesome. It can definitely encourage. I get you with the game. It's weird, and it's funny too that people have this perception of me as an outdoor guy, and so I do it all the time. Well, I don't do it all the time. I got a job, and so that's why I've been able to do some great things. Some people have been able to do amazing things, but it's cost prohibitive. You don't have a job and you're rich, you get to do this stuff. Well, that's not practical for me.
It is. It's interesting the stories we tell ourselves about other people's lives on social media from what we see. I would get that too. When I remember, like, my birthday's in July, and I wrote a post on my birthday, kind of like talking about some of the pain that I had been through and how it had been a really hard year. And I had a lot of messages and from people that I would run into, like, oh man, I thought your life was perfect, from like all these beautiful pictures you're always posting of yourself in Costa Rica, like doing yoga and yada yada. And I was like, oh man, I'm sorry that that's the picture that I painted. Like, I was not trying to do that. Like, my life is not all shiny roses and beautiful beaches and yoga poses all the time. And I want to be really careful to never like portray that type of image. And I think all too often too many people are doing that.
I think it's even more inspiring when you see that someone is living this life given that they're going through all this stuff too. And if you realize it, it becomes that much more rich. It's not this perfect person has achieved this and what's the shortcut to get to that, because there is no shortcut. Right. It's just, in spite of all these things, I'm still able to live a life that's fulfilling. And I think that's, once you understand that with the people that you follow, then it's much better, much more rich. But
I think that's a really important thing that we talk about, our vulnerability and our pain, because I think that's ultimately like what really connects us at the core of who we are, because we all go through the same things. We're just not talking about them because we just want to talk about the easy things, because again, we're always just trying to avoid that pain, and we don't want people to know we're in pain either. So I think the more we can have those type of discussions and really support each other through that, the more compassion and empathy and understanding we'll have of each other.
Yeah. It's ridiculous to assume that people don't go through pain, right? And then that I have no one to share with because no one knows. Well, they know within their own context. It's a different context, but they still get it. You know, they can still be someone that you talk to or share. You don't have to hold it up because you're the only person that's ever done this before. That's crazy to think about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, as far as mental health, that's a huge thing. And then winter here, Ketchikan, you start looking at, you can be pessimistic. As easy as it is to look at the brochure of Ketchikan during the summer, it could be just as easy to look at the flip side and all the negatives. And it can be a pretty dark place, literally and figuratively. Right. I talked, I guess, 2 podcasts ago with a buddy of mine who lives on Prince of Wales, and the I wouldn't say deteriorating health, but the increasing drug problem over there. And a lot of times that is for a coping mechanism. People have become aware that they're bored when it used to be, you live in an outdoor wilderness. Ketchikan is, the city, whereas Klawock is, a little village, and you have so much access to outside and you can be self-sufficient. There's so much to do. Yeah. And yet people are turning to drugs, and it's, to cover pain, for boredom, for whatever. Yeah. And it's sad to see, the hometown. But, we're losing track of the amount of power we have over our happiness and our wellness because of distractions.
Yeah, I think it's distractions, and I think it's, again, I know I keep saying this, but it's avoiding that pain. And I really think boredom is like a disease, because when you are willing to face your pain and go through, whatever it is that you're feeling, and actually sit with it and learn from it and grow from it, it feels really impossible to be bored. There is so much life out there. There is so much to do. There's so much to learn. There's so much to experience. It seems madness to me that you can feel bored, and I think that's a huge testament to just how depressed we are, how anxious we are, how out of touch with ourselves that we are, that we can feel bored, and that we, that we aren't dealing with our pain, and we're turning to things like huge distractions like drugs, anything to not feel this. I think that's the biggest thing with drugs. Please take this away. Please don't let me feel this. And it's a really big problem. And I think it starts with really teaching our kids about it, about how to face it.
I was talking in my class about virtual reality and how in the name of making, it's going to be medicinal, it's going to help people who are this, and so you can put on the goggles and you can trick your mind into thinking you're having these rich experiences, which is, maybe treating a symptom but not really the cause. Like, why are you not going out and doing stuff? And, will we get to the point where in the name of treatment and making people feel better, are we totally going to rob them of actual experiences? And the virtual reality thing, I have no interest in it, but it terrifies me, because the better it is and the more, you're looking at something that's not real, but it's impacting your brain or stimulating your brain in a way that make you kind of think it's real. You're almost living like a sedated lifestyle. And it's scary to think about, that's just like a drug. It's impacting the brain. It doesn't have the same sort of impact maybe internally, but it's not real.
No, it's not. But I think we're at this really really time in our lives where technology is growing exponentially. We can't keep up with it. No. It's so fascinating to watch. Never before has there been something like this in our human lifetimes that has grown so fast and has taken over our lives. Imagine your day without a computer or a phone now. We can't. And just when I was in high school, that wasn't even a thing yet. And that it's crazy how fast it's growing. And I think what we need to be really mindful of is how it's serving us, and make sure that we're using it for good, because I do think it's an amazing tool. We're more connected we have the opportunity to be more connected than ever before across the world with these technologies. And we also have the opportunity to really tap into, our neuroscience and our physiology, and really look at how we can help ourselves, how we can be better humans. And I think when we can use it in that way, technology becomes an amazing tool for us.
Yeah.
But I think we have to be careful about misusing it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think virtual reality is part of it is actually really terrifying to think that could happen, and that we could go down that road of, just that's another way to escape our reality and escape our pain. Like, I'm just going to live in that virtual world. But I also think that, for some people, maybe for someone who lives in the city and who can't leave the city ever, they could put on virtual reality goggles and help with their anxiety by looking at something beautiful that's nature, and helping them like ground down more. So I think there's ways like that we can use it, and it can be really beneficial and good, but we just have to be really careful that it doesn't become a detrimental thing to us.
Yeah, I think curiosity is really important, especially at when you're a kid. You only know your urban setting. You only know that this is this, and you go to the grocery store and the food is there, not knowing where it comes from or what happens, to make it get there. But that curiosity can be important. So if you're exposed to something like, wow, this is a thing. This is, wow, okay, I want to maybe check that out when I graduate. Or if you're living that sort of urban, adulting lifestyle where you're feeling unfulfilled, if you get a glimpse of what something else is like, say, hey, I want to go try that out.
Yeah.
Could definitely be good, absolutely.
Yeah.
As with any medication, there are people who need it, and it's great, and it helps them live normal lives.
Right.
And some of those fringe people who maybe convince themselves that something is wrong and it's out of their control, then, hey, you know what, I can treat this myself, or with the help of strong friends and nutritionists or fitness or whatnot.
Yeah, so it can be a tool, right? Like anything else, you can use it for good or you can abuse it in that way. And I think oftentimes technology gets a really bad rap because most of us abuse it. We don't use it for good.
Exactly.
But technology is an incredible thing, and it has really allowed I can't imagine being able to travel the way I did without it. I can't imagine going somewhere without being able to look up reviews on it first.
Yeah.
Or how easy it is now to just book a plane ticket, or get service in another country and connect back to people you love at home. I mean, that's incredible. It's incredible that we have that. I think it's a great thing.
Even something like the group text. I got my Arizona buddies from college, and then it's a football game, and all of a sudden the 10 of us reconnect through text messaging for an hour, and it's kind of fun to be. Used to be write letters or you'd give a call, but now you can kind of just reconnect, which is great. But again, how do you use that? And I think you got to self-check, and that's not to look at, hey, you're wrong or you're bad or this or that. Just say, okay, well, maybe I dial back a little bit, or make sure I know why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Well, and I think it's crazy too that we literally have any information we want at our fingertips. Anything we want, we can look up, and what are we looking up? Looking up we're looking at each other's lives on Instagram that aren't actually our real lives or a real depiction of their reality, and we're looking at cat videos, and we're looking at who knows what, and we can literally be looking up anything, and it's crazy that's what we're doing. So it can be an incredible tool to connect us globally, to also help us understand the realities of what's happening on the other side of the world that we wouldn't have been able to understand before. And in that way, I think it's a super powerful social connector.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, it's getting close to 10 o'clock here. I know you got a class showing up here. Where can people find you? Where can they read you? Where can they find out about your wellness?
Yeah, so you can go to my website. It's feedinghappiness.com. All my information is on there. That's where you can find out about some of the teacher retreats that I do. I'm also starting a class for kids here at Ketchikan based on mindfulness and yoga, and we're going to do some nutrition as well. You can find that information on my website. And then I'm also teaching yoga. I teach here at CrossFit, and I teach at the Rec Center. So.
And then the social media, which is the authentic representation of your life, right? What is that?
Authentic representation of my life. Yeah. You can. It's feeding.happiness. I am on Instagram.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for being here and taking time out of this stormy Saturday.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
All right.